Welcome back to my new show, Patten Disregard, where not only can you listen to me wherever you get your podcasts, but now you can also watch me. Just go to Booked It Media's YouTube page. On this week's show, we talk with Ginna Claire Mason, currently stopping the show on a nightly basis playing Glinda the Good Witch in Wicked on Broadway. And we'll talk with Lisa Gajda, our resident therapist, because God knows I need psychiatric care.
If you work in the theaters of Manhattan, you probably heard of Nate Patten. And whether black, white, Asian, or Latin, you want to punch him right in the mouth. But please don't do it, no, he's just our Nate, a man of many thoughts he can't abbreviate. But if you like a gay, misanthropic, self-hating Jew, then Patten Disregard is just the show for you.
Welcome to Broadway 2021, everybody. Where now, in order to play a role on Broadway, you have to literally be the character you're playing in real life. And no, I don't just mean you can't be white and in Fences. Even Tilda Swinton can't get away with that. I mean, in order to play Evita in 2021, you need to have been married to Juan Perón. The same goes for writers, too. Good luck writing a show about anything other than your own experience. If you're straight, you're not even allowed to imagine what it would be like to be gay. And if you're going to write a musical about crossing the Mexican border, you need to still be in the back of a box truck. Doesn't this all defeat the point of acting? When somebody runs a faucet on the set, we know it's not really plumbing. There's a suspension of disbelief. Casting notices used to say, seeking a thrilling pop voice up to a B flat. Now it's, you need to be a Filipino woman with endometriosis. Casting directors used to be looking for talent, not signing you up for 23andMe. James Corden this year was the victim of a truly brutal online bashing for daring to play a gay character, despite not being gay. First of all, are you really telling me that you wouldn't believe James Corden was gay? And most of the outrage directed at him is saying that he hasn't lived the gay experience. What experience is that? Going to Red Shirt Day at Disneyland? I'm a gay guy from New Jersey, and I guarantee you that's a different life than a lesbian in Ghana. Now we have Lin-Manuel Miranda. Even he isn't safe from this stupid shit. The day after the release of his critically acclaimed In the Heights movie, he had to issue an apology for not having enough Afro-Latinx people in his movie. And you know what? It's true. There weren't very many Afro-Latinx people in the Heights. You know what else there wasn't any of? Vietnam vets and blind people. Because the movie wasn't about any of those people either. It was about the people in his neighborhood. And I guarantee you, Lin wanted to say chupa mi pinga to these people on Twitter. But instead, this guy had to issue a formal apology for making a movie about his relatives. This is who's apologizing for not being woke enough? The guy who made George Washington black? We are in the Hunger Games of wokeness. And look, I get it. I don't want to see Jessica Simpson play Harriet Tubman. But somebody might, and that's what making art is all about. Context, risk, nuance. As artists, we're going to have to make this distinction ourselves as opposed to letting the Twitter mob decide what we create. We're here to push the boundaries of expression. But you know what that takes? Talent! Welcome to Outrage Roulette. In this segment, we spin two roulette wheels, one of Tony Award nominees from the 90s and another of social justice issues. When both wheels stop, we will call out said 90s star for their silence on whatever social issue the wheel spins to. Okay, let's spin the wheel. Chip Zion, please explain your silence on a Bill of Rights for plants. Let it be known here on social media that Chip Zion is anti-Bill of Rights for plants. Chip, your silence on this is absolutely deafening. And frankly, you need to be held accountable. If you know Chip Zion, we ask that you tag him on social media and bring him to a place of reckoning. Chip, if you don't respond, it will be understood that you are anti-plant. We're back with Lisa Gajda. I know we spent a lot of time in the last episode talking about how we have not yet really processed COVID and the trauma that came out of it. I'm hearing a lot of my actor friends and a lot of people in show business talk about the difficulty about reacclimating to being around other people.
Yeah.
Just in the most basic sense, being in a room full of other people. What do we do? How can you help? No.
So there are three things that come to mind. One is that we need to know that it's going to be funky at times.
Yeah.
Right. So we just need to know that. And allow that to, like, you know, and give that grace to other people as well. So like I had coffee with somebody for the first time and I was just like, if this wasn't COVID, you have no idea how utterly X'd out of my life you would be, because, you know, he's feral too. We were feral and we did not enjoy it. So we just need to know, we need to give ourselves grace and we need to give other people grace that we have not been you know, being social is actually a muscle. You know, and so we have not, those muscles are messed up and atrophied. So the space that so that's one thing. We need to understand that this is going to be bumpy with ourselves and with others. The other thing is that anxiety can come up, right? So there are things that have you had anxiety at all? Like,
I've never not had anxiety.
Yeah.
No, of course. Oh my God. Are you kidding?
So you're talking to somebody and you're having social anxiety?
Honest to God, no, I don't have I have anxiety about literally everything else there is to be worried about, you know, Skylab falling from the sky concerns me.
Yep.
But social anxiety, I'm fine. I actually don't have anxiety about that, but everything else. But I know a lot of people with social anxiety.
It comes up a lot in my work. People talk a lot about it. They talk about it being really exacerbated because we're out of practice. And we also have a lot of vulnerability coming out of the pandemic. So the vulnerability, the out of practice, you know, and sort of like, you know, being disoriented and then having to socialize. And the other person is also messed up. So that also brings out a certain kind of thing. And so one of the things that I would do is talk about like grounding tools. Like even if you're like in rehearsal and you're becoming overwhelmed, unprocessed stuff is coming up. You can do, and it sounds ridiculous. It's basically just mindfulness. And mindfulness sounds like a lot of like sort of like voodoo hooey. But what mindfulness is it's like you're having an anxiety attack, you're having panic, you're having thoughts, repetitive thoughts, worry about being with other people or whatever it is, expectations. Mindfulness, sort of, if you were watching a brain scan, it just moves. You would light up someplace else. So you're sort of redirecting what your brain is doing. And mindfulness is very simple. There are apps that I recommend to clients. There's an app called Smiling Mind, and they're Australian. So they have those fierce accents.
So they're automatically cool too.
Automatically cool.
And sexy.
Yeah. And sexy.
Do you like Headspace? Have you heard of this app? I use that.
I have heard of it. It's probably, you know, I've never used it, but I'm sure it's similar. Basically, like what Smiling Mind does is I think Calm is another app.
Yes.
It's like 7 minutes, different, you know, I think a body scan is a great thing because your brain can't do two things at the same time. So if you move your attention away from your worries, you move it over here and you start noticing your own body, it literally can't do its thing. Right. It's lost its grip.
Everyone I know is anxious.
Yeah.
I mean that almost literally. I either anxious or depressed or having all sorts of feelings.
Yes.
Pretty much everybody.
Yes.
Like I especially in theater.
Yeah.
I think if you went around the room and you were like, raise your hand if you've been having anxiety, I really think every single hand would go up. And if your hand didn't go up,
then I hate you.
I hate you. And two, you're not in touch with your anxiety.
That's right. Then you're depressed.
Then you're depressed. Right. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
You know, it's always the people that, you know, say everything's great that end up killing their spouse too. Right. They always look really happy in the pictures before, you know.
I know.
But I think it's important for people in the industry, as particular, to recognize that they're not alone. I think so many people I think when people feel anxious, they feel like they're the only anxious person in the room.
It's such an amazing point, Nate. It's one of the things that I said. So my practice and I will sort of rove around different industries and talk. We'll do like, you know, sort of presentations about mental health, like at a law firm or whatever. And what we talk about is actually normalizing anxiety and depression in the workplace. And actually, contrary to what you might think, like everyone falling apart, it actually keeps things functioning at a higher level when people are like, literally, because we're mammals and we're designed to regulate each other. If you were to say to me, I feel anxious, and I said to you, I feel anxious, then we're regulating each other by it's called in some of the models that I use, and sounds really touchy-feely, but it's called undoing aloneness. And it's a huge part of supporting somebody and in their mental health. It's a huge part of what you do as a therapist is you undo aloneness. We are designed scientifically to lean on each other. We're really social. And so one of the things that we can do in this time is we can sort of be the one that says, and appropriately, you don't want to be like in the middle of like learning your alto line, like, you know, I just want to say I'm feeling really vulnerable right now. I mean, maybe. It depends on the creative team.
I'd love if someone said that. I'd be like,
oh my God.
Great, then you can go outside in the hall.
That's right. I would have stopped literally every music rehearsal. But, you know, like when you're in the hallway, whatever, and also too, actually unofficial groups of people can meet on a weekly basis or a monthly basis or a biweekly basis and sort of undoing aloneness, getting together and going, what's it been like for you as you re-enter? Let's take 45 minutes a week and connect.
I remember once reading about certain symptoms, that's either symptoms or like certain kinds of anxiety. And I read one on a particular list. I'm not going to say what it is, but it was something that I really, truly believed I was the only person on earth that experienced. It was something that I was like, I'm like, this is such a weird thing that I feel like it's such a weird quirk that I have.
Right. Yeah.
And it was on a list of like common anxieties. And I remember being
surprised.
like, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Other people have felt that.
What was that like for you? Like, what did it do to your anxiety level?
I was thrilled. It made me so happy. As I said, oh my God, I really thought that it was just a weird thing that I did. And I was like, it's not only do other people feel it, it was common. It was like on the list of common anxieties.
That's the thing. It's like, even if you're traumatized, it's actually oftentimes, I don't want to minimize anyone's trauma, but really it's the aftermath. If you're alone in the trauma, that's where most of the damage happens, is what happens once that's occurred. And if you're alone, that's where all of the sort of real stuff happens.
I think part of the issue though with COVID right now and this time in theater is that we all had it happen to us.
Yeah.
If you were fighting in the front lines of Iraq and you came over and reacclimated yourself with your family, nobody else in your house was fighting in Iraq.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean it was better or worse, but it just means that you felt that. Yeah. Here, though, your whole family had the same experience.
Yeah.
So I think that it might be more difficult to recognize feelings right now when everyone else around you has them. It just is like the whole bar has moved or something.
Well, it's like when a family, I remember watching a family member die in my family and noticing I can't imagine, as you were talking about the Iraq soldier, the soldier coming home from Iraq, I literally was like, oh, the loneliness of that, the isolation of that must be unreal. The problem with everybody going through it is what you're saying. So there's another problem, which is that I remember watching this family member die and watching 4 people that were closest to the death respond completely. So no one was able to be there for the other, right? And they were all having really different reactions. And a lot of the time, people's reactions will clash. So it can create trouble,
Do you think that, would you encourage people to go to therapy during this time?
If you can't afford therapy, I would find a way to connect unofficially. When the pandemic started, I created a group of people that met for free without a leader. And they did amazing things in that pandemic because they were together. They really moved each other along and got each other through. So I would say if you have no money, do that. Get the apps, do mindfulness. So I can give tools and they're helpful, but there's much deeper work to do. And besides the fact that we need to do that work, it's also like an opportunity to take this suffering. There's this Buddhist guy that everyone knows. I can't remember exactly what his name was. I wish I could remember. He's a Buddhist monk. And he said in one of the trainings that I did for therapy, make this suffering useful. Mm. And so it's a way of not squandering this suffering.
We are so happy and lucky to have you on this show, and we can't wait to continue talking more about this. Speaking of suffering, watch episode 3. She's currently starring as Glinda in the Broadway company of Wicked, welcoming audiences back after COVID. Please welcome here, Ginna Claire Mason.
Thanks for having me, Nate.
So, a lot of times in an interview, I have to do a lot of research about the person. I think about all the questions I want to ask, and I look at all the different things. And for you, I was kind of like, yeah, I'm good. Let me just have her here. So I watched a clip of you recently that was on national, everywhere, all over the world, coming out in the bubble as Glinda, welcoming the first audience back at Wicked, saying, "It's good to see me, isn't it?"
Isn't it?
And it was like David Bowie resurrected from the dead. I saw it was a response like I've never seen. What went through your head?
It was, I feel like the word is probably overused at this point, but it was very surreal. It was sort of an out-of-body experience. I felt grateful that we had the invited dress, even though there wasn't as many people there as there were opening night, just to sort of have practice from, essentially the empty Gershwin Theater to all of a sudden 2,000 screaming humans. But even just like before they call it the map, before the map of Oz comes out, just being in the bubble and hearing all the murmurs of happy theater goers out in their seats was really moving. And so I think there's something cool about in that moment of the show. It just fits. She's coming down in the bubble, and all the Ozians are so excited to see her. So it felt, I guess, in character to just sit there and soak it all in.
Did you ever get an ovation like that in your life?
No,
anywhere else?
no.
I don't think anyone has.
No.
It was literally minutes of sustained cheers. It was
really cool.
Insane.
And my husband was out in the audience and was like, "I've never experienced anything
Who
like
has?
that."
Were you thinking that? You had to know they were going to be a great audience, but were you prepared for that?
No.
You didn't know it was going to be that quite long ago.
I don't think so. No.
It was insane. It was. You can watch the clip at home. It was utterly insane how long it went on for. Because in some ways, to me, watching it on video, it felt like this pent up energy that was finally able to be released as an audience member.
Yeah.
And it was really beautiful. And that clip went viral because something about it.
It was for everyone. It was, the release that you're talking about. It's like everybody collectively, we needed that as I don't know.
I really truly believe that clip will be forever immortalized because I think it represents a very specific moment in time.
It's cool that they decided to film it actually, because we do have, I'd say, rather strict, policies in terms of social media and what could be filmed and what could be captured. And so the fact that they did choose to capture that, I think is special.
I was wondering if those policies went out the window. They were like, we're not supposed to record, but roll the cameras because we've been closed for 19 months. But
it was special.
It was incredible. I think a lot of other shows, or not a lot, a couple other shows had already opened before Wicked.
Hadestown.
Passover, which is a new play. There was something about Wicked reopening that felt significant, at least to me as an audience member of Wicked.
And that night was Hamilton, Wicked, and Lion King. So it did feel like a big moment.
You did the Wicked tour before Broadway, right?
Yes.
So you transferred from the tour to Broadway, essentially.
I actually started on Broadway as the standby.
Oh.
And I did that for 16 months. And that's when you came to see me with,
sure did.
I think Dana Quadrino was on, right?
Yes.
And then I went on tour. And I think I had like a 5-month contract, and that got longer and longer. And I was on tour for 20 months, which was wild.
Do they always promote a standby to the role? They don't.
I think they kind of go back and forth. I think sometimes they like to vet people and sort of move them up the ladder. And then sometimes people just plop into the lead role.
It's not a guarantee, though.
No,
so
definitely not.
You don't know that you're going to get it. When you had played the standby, did you want to do the part? Or
For sure, yeah.
You liked doing it because you got to do it as a standby.
Very little, but yes.
Okay. In my head, you did it all the time because I saw you do it, but I guess it was only one time.
I think I went on, in 16 months, I went on 25 times, which means for 500 something shows, I was just
that's not a lot.
Chilling backstage.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the word on the street, I've never worked on Wicked, is that Wicked, that show's been running for almost 20 years.
18 years this next month, yeah.
Yeah. So apparently you don't get a huge amount of liberty to reinterpret anything as a character because the show has been running for so long. So my question is, how do you balance doing a role that is iconic, that people know, people have an expectation of what it is, but also bringing your own Ginna Claire sensibility, your own sense of humor to it?
There's definitely, it's a green machine in some ways, stand here, do this. But I actually think I've been given quite a bit of creative freedom.
Really?
More so in the role than when I was the standby, for sure.
Right.
But I think just in terms of casting, I feel like they do a good job of picking people that they trust to maintain the integrity of the way it was originally directed, but then also bring themselves to it. So I feel like there's a lot of me that trickles in.
It has to be.
I don't know, because I have 3 brothers. I don't know. I think I'm kind of quirky and tomboyish sometimes, and I feel like that's maybe a little bit of my Glinda too. So, and then actually popular, I feel like is where you get.
Yeah. The wand.
In some
stuff.
ways, there's definitely, you know, you have to hit this and this and this, but I feel like there's a lot of freedom sort of in between to change. And I actually will say, I feel like you'll love this too. When we were reteching, sort of leading up to this reopening, I was given some freedom to even change some things, to change some blocking. And
Really?
because of this improv work that Joe Mantello came in and did with us. And they were like, oh, we like that, or we like that, so let's change that.
Tell me what that is.
And that's been fun.
What kind of improv work?
So I think it was the first or second week of rehearsals. I want to say the second week. Joe came.
You mean post-COVID?
Post-COVID.
Yeah, reopening. Okay.
So that first week we did the sing through, and that was really fun. And then the next week Joe came in, and it was a day that we actually didn't know he was coming in, and we just did the opening for him. He was like, okay. And then he had us all sit in a big circle. It felt like an acting class. It was actually, I think, really fun. And he had me stand up in the middle, and he said, we're gonna work through the opening number, but there's these series of flashbacks that Glinda's having, and basically like no one could move until I went over and moved them. So I was sort of bringing the flashbacks to life. But it was so cool to sort of stand in the middle and experience that with the cast all around me, and pull people in, and we didn't have to stick exactly to the words, and we didn't have to do the blocking at all. In fact, we weren't really supposed to, just to see what happened. And so we did that through the first couple of scenes and found new things. And, for some of us, a handful of us, the principals have been there for a good long while, and some people were brand new. And yeah, it was sort of fun to all sort of start from scratch and be on the same page. And then just to work with Joe is really cool.
Amazing. What feels different about doing it after what the world has been through with COVID?
It's interesting. Everybody sort of coming back to the show was thinking about that opening number, the "It's good to see me, isn't it?" line. And I had a conversation with Joe. It was probably right before our invited dress. I said, of course, always keeping the story in mind, and without, spoiler alerts, where Glinda's coming from and where she's going and what she has to do. I said,
Right.
Do you want me to sort of move things along and stay in this moment, or do you want me to acknowledge what is happening? He said, we have to acknowledge, what is happening, which is this, coming together again of a community. So there was that line, but that line at the end of the show is the one that I kept thinking about, which is Glinda says, fellow Ozians friends, we have been through a frightening time, and there will be other times and other things that frighten us. But if you let me, I'd like to try to help. I'd like to try to be Glinda the good. And that was the line that on the other side of this, that I can look out at a whole, break the fourth wall, look out at all these people and say, friends, we have been through something horrific, all of us. No person has gone untouched.
Not a single person
right.
on Earth. Right.
And Joe even said, after we've been through a frightening time, he was like, let that land. And so that's
right. He wanted it to resonate with the present day.
Absolutely.
I am finding that a lot of things are resonating in a different way in theater. For example, I saw Moulin Rouge before pre-COVID, and it was such a joyful spectacle of music and dancing, and just it was so energized, and it was stylistic and gorgeous, and that to me resonates differently now. I was watching it on Tony's last night, and seeing dancing and singing, just that alone means something different now.
Yeah.
That resonates in a way that it didn't before. That alone carries weight. There doesn't need to be a story. Just someone dancing on stage is powerful in a way that it wasn't. Do you think that it is difficult to keep a long run fresh? You've done how many performances have you done?
This Friday, is going to be my 1,000th
Yeah.
show.
How do you keep it? What do you do to keep it energized?
I mean, I guess this is like a basic actor answer, but listening and responding, right? So, I mean, I'm sure you've heard this too, even just as a not just as a music director, as a music director.
You can say just as that.
How do you do this 8 times? How do you do this 8 times a week? And I think the beauty of live theater, and there are so many storytelling platforms. During the pandemic, we all enjoyed a bit of Netflix, and but there's something so unique about this unfiltered, unedited form of entertainment that you get to experience. Every show is different because every audience is different, and every show is different because you're on stage with real live human people who are bringing in the experiences of their day or pushing those experiences aside for the moment. But when you're on stage with, I don't know, living human breathing people, it's electric.
One of the things about Wicked pre-COVID is that it was always there.
Yep.
You just like Wicked, like that wasn't going anywhere. Staple. You would certain things you're like, I don't know, is that going to close this year? One of the Disney shows, is that going to make it? You weren't sure. Wicked, you knew it wasn't going anywhere.
Right.
What do you think? We are in this existential period with COVID now, where everything inherently feels like it could be on the chopping block because we're in a financial crisis.
No one's safe.
No one's safe. No one talks about that, by the way. No one talks about it on the Broadway world. That is like, we're in a financial crisis. Like, this is not good.
I know. I was listening to your video that said they're not reporting grosses right now.
They're not reporting grosses.
Which I didn't know, but that's interesting.
Yeah, I've got symptoms, but I'm not going to the doctor. I'm just going to coast through and hope it's okay. So I wonder, what does that do for a company like Phantom of the Opera, like Lion King, like Wicked, when, I don't know, are we going to make it till January? I hope that we do. I mean, I pray that we do. I think they will.
I think it's interesting how they've scattered openings too.
Yeah.
Not everybody opened in September. Some of the bigger iconic shows are opening. Some in October, some in November, some in December, and I wonder if that's a marketing move to say, well, let's see how this goes for the other shows, but also not inundating, I guess, the market too much too soon.
But again, Broadway grosses are what producers use as a barometer about what to move forward with, and now they can't see it. So we're somehow I think my opinion is we're doing a disservice to the industry to not report grosses. I know we don't want to see, selling at 5%.
The man behind the curtain.
We don't. We're selling at 5% capacity. You went to Elon
University, sure did.
Elon University. So you have a BFA in musical theater.
Sure do.
So you're one of the people that came out with a BFA and had a career on Broadway. There's the other pile of people that never went to a class in their life in any capacity and have a career on Broadway.
Totally. Or went to school to be a doctor. Totally. Or like Carly Bettiol went to business school.
Right. So what's the good side and what's the not good side?
Of what?
Of training as your college experience.
Well, I'm like an unpaid walking advertisement for Elon University. I freaking love my alma mater. No, I like Elon so much. I had such a good experience. And as a teacher myself now, no, I think I've always been a fan of getting an education, no matter in something. Mm-hmm. I think well-rounded people make well-rounded performers. And so when I was looking at schools, even as a high schooler, I thought it'd be cool to be in a liberal arts setting so I could learn as much as I could about the world. Because there's something to be said for, being in really difficult, challenging singing and acting and dancing classes. But I was taking history and science and math and anthropology, stuff like so. And I think, unless you're in chorus line, more often than not, you're playing a witch or a waitress or, not
what do you mean?
Not a performer. I don't know, just having the point of view of someone who knows about a lot of different things.
Sure. Do you feel like you bring that to Glinda? Does Glinda have to? I mean,
Glinda's so worldly. She knows about so many things, or at least she thinks she does.
what excites you creatively and artistically?
Oh man, that's a good question. It's something where early on in I think quarantine, I was saying to everyone around me, but also to myself, like, you should be doing something that creatively inspires you every day. And maybe that's calling someone, maybe that's writing a letter or journaling. I don't know if that sounds cheesy. I started working like through The Artist's Way. I'm sure you've heard of that book.
Yes.
But then I think teaching definitely inspired me a lot, and just seeing kids who are excited to perform and excited about this industry.
I started teaching too during COVID, and it does make you feel good.
Inspired,
actually.
yeah.
It does. And I know this sounds really cliche. You learn a lot.
You learn so much.
You get better yourself when you teach someone.
I'd like to think so.
I think you do. I'm not sure how or why.
I think because it enhances your critical eye, or just having to be able to articulate something makes you think about it differently, maybe. So then you're executing things differently or thinking about them differently.
Yeah.
Like teaching voice, I think, made me a better singer. Having to articulate why you need to do a certain thing. And in some cases, it meant me being like, okay, you need to do this. And then a student going, why? And I'm like, I don't know why. I'm going to go figure out why. And I'm going to get back to you on that.
Right. So when I know Glinda was a dream for you.
Yes.
It really was, right? It was something you fantasized about forever, right?
I saw the original cast.
And you always wanted to do it.
Yeah.
They used to call that The Secret back in the day, and now that book isn't sold anymore. Do you don't even know what The Secret is? There was like that.
I've heard of
really
it.
Popular book where you're supposed to like visualize something, and then it will happen.
Well, I did that.
It was, of course, you did. So every successful person I know does this. The Secret. You're so down to earth. I've always thought you're down to earth.
Thanks,
and
Nate.
It's like I mean it as a compliment, but it's more just a fact than a compliment. I think, but. How do you stay down to earth? Like, how do you, like, what, you're a Broadway star, you're starring in a Broadway show. Like, what, I mean, I guess the world shutting down didn't hurt, but like, how do you stay,
Did you find when you were teaching that you see these kids who are so excited about Broadway? Do you look at them and go like, oh, that was me 2 seconds ago?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's something really humbling about that.
Me
like,
too. Yeah.
That was me 2 seconds ago. I mean, it's not been 2 seconds, but
it feels like 2 seconds.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's true. I mean, I think too, just the nature of, I'll tell you, COVID was a brick wall to the face for a lot of people in this industry, for everybody.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I was thinking, imagine you had told everybody, oh, we're going to shut down for a year and a half. You wouldn't even be able to possibly understand. You would say, why? Like, you wouldn't. In some ways, it's good that we didn't know how long
I think
it would
so
be.
too.
If we had gotten the information that it was a year and a half in March and not 4 weeks and a little bit at a time, there was something terrible about it prolonging. But if we found it was like day one, a year and a half, I mean, what would we even do?
So Broadway shut down March 12th.
Yes.
March 1st, I left to go film something in Florida, Central Florida. I was like in the middle of nowhere when everything was kind of going down. And I remember my manager calling me sort of as everything was happening. And Central Florida was not being affected in the same way that, Manhattan was at that time. I was so outside of it. And I remember him saying, his name's Josh. Josh was saying, at this point they were saying you're reopening in a month. He was like, I don't think it's going to be till September. And I was like, oh, Josh, that's so pessimistic. It's not going to be September this fall. Granted, then of course it was September the following year.
Right.
So I kept telling, leading up to this reopening, I was like, you were right. It was September. We just didn't know it was going to be September 2021. But no, I think being able to take it in increments was actually more manageable for everyone's sanity, right?
I suppose it didn't necessarily make it better as much as it just prolonged it or something.
Right.
But do you think the industry is going to shift now? Are we going to see changes in the industry? Is it going to be?
I think we already are.
I mean, sure.
Yeah, for sure.
What's happening? Where are we heading?
Right now we're when I think it was Aaron Tveit last night on the Tonys thanked his COVID team at Moulin Rouge. I was like, what a world that we live in.
Yeah,
That we're thanking
I
our
know.
COVID teams. But yeah, like our COVID team's great at the
Totally.
Gershwin.
Yeah, no, and they're
Thank goodness for them. But like, when are we not going to have COVID teams? Even that line that Glinda says, like, we have been through a frightening time. At that point, I can look out and see an entire masked audience. And even that is, wild and different. And, we wear masks backstage. So even being on stage and being in, this other world, being in Oz, and then stepping off stage and seeing everyone in masks and shields,
I find
it's bizarre.
I'm just going to say this. This is maybe an unpopular opinion. I find it sad that we're in masks. I know, like, it's necessary for health reasons and that it's a good thing to do. But, like, I don't, like, this feels like we've gotten used to it.
Mm-hmm.
And we've mistaken like normalizing it. We've mistaken getting used to it for normalizing it. And I don't think we're not meant to have our faces covered.
No, I agree. But also,
I'm not an anti-mask,
right?
I promise. But like,
I think
sucks.
the alternative would have maybe had to have been, and I don't think it would have been worth it financially, to reopen at limited capacity.
Right.
And I feel like that would have been really hard too.
No, of course.
So
it's the only way.
But when do you think masks won't be required? Do you think that'll be spring?
Well, that's what
2022.
That's my question.
Is it 2021? Yeah,
How do we-
2022.
How do we get out of this? When do we stop wearing masks? Do we ever stop wearing?
When do we
them?
stop doing COVID? Like, I'm being tested once
Yeah.
a week, sometimes twice a week. Some shows are testing
Sometimes
every
I do-
day.
Sometimes I do it just for fun.
Just go to a van around the corner,
Yeah,
just
like,
because they're there, and why not?
Sometimes I'm home alone having a glass of wine. I'm like, you know what? Tonight's a good night to do that. I just wonder though, like, what's the end plan for this? Where were we going?
This is why I'm not a producer, but
Me neither.
I think they're gonna have to keep gauging it step by step. I think every show is doing what they have to do to be able to open right now.
Yes.
And I think things will change as things, and this is me being an optimist, keep improving.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. It's tough to say. We've if you look back at the past year and a half, we've all been wrong about everything. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, if you look at what people were saying.
It's humbling though, right?
It is. It's so true. It's you look at what we were saying as an industry in March 2020, we've been pretty much miscalculating everything in every way. Sometimes we were right. I mean, we were, it was to our benefit, I think, to be, safer. But I just wonder, like, what the long term, like, how do we really get audiences back?
Yeah.
How do we
I
really
think getting
how do we
audiences back is huge, because I think, you can draw from the tri-state area for a good long while, but we need people from
Iowa.
far and wide. But
We
didn't
need-
travel bans just change recently? Was that this week?
I'm not sure.
International travel bans?
I don't know.
Fact checkers?
Will the fact-checking team please get on that? Thank you. So tell me about during COVID, you had a son. You have a baby born during a pandemic.
I remember voice memoing you about this.
I do,
I'm
too.
having a baby. Yeah, that was crazy. They always kind of say there's no good time to have a baby. And then this happened. And I think every woman who's ever wanted to have a child and man, it was
Right.
like, maybe this is the good time. Granted, I think being pregnant during the pandemic had its challenges and trials, but it was sort
Sure.
of this pause that I was just texting with Rachel Schur this morning. Elizabeth Stanley just had a baby. My friend Laurel Harris, she's about to have, the list goes on. I'm on the Broadway Baby Mamas Facebook group now, which thank God
They won't let me on.
Should I send you
I
an invite?
emailed them.
But it was kind of the perfect time. And, you were talking about how, we didn't know at the beginning that it was going to be a year and a half. And so I do think it was.
Did it change your performance?
Being a mom?
Knowing that you have a child? I know Glinda's not a mother as a character. But
Right. Well, I have some fan fiction, which I don't know if we want to get into that. But there's that like shotgun engagement in Act 2, and I'm like, what's really happening here,
interesting.
Glinda?
Oh, I see. So it is life imitating
I mean,
art.
who knows? That is not backed by any of the creative team or the book necessarily. Just
no one else endorses this idea except you. Got it. You know, I actually read that there has not been a baby boom. That a lot of sociologists were expecting possibly there to be a baby boom.
Coronials, I've heard.
What is it?
Coronials.
Oh, coronials.
Yes.
Oh, I did. Oh, fascinating.
Yep.
I didn't know that. And there has not been a baby boom, actually.
Really?
I was surprised to hear it too.
That's shocking.
I mean, yeah, of course, babies were born. Maybe a little more than normal, but it wasn't like the World War II baby boom, which was like, we have a whole generation. You would have thought that, so
I feel like there was a baby boom, but that is also my own bias of, I don't know, having a lot of friends my age that maybe it's just the times. I don't know. I just feel like everyone's having a baby.
Yeah. I think maybe in the theater community it happened because it was like, well, it's probably a good year to be pregnant. You know what I mean? Because you're like,
not a lot of jobs right now. Not a lot of auditions.
I mean, if you were gonna do it,
not many dance calls. I can hide the bump.
So it's possible, but I also think though that because I think so many people were hit hard economically,
right? That's
that people
true.
were like, I'm not having another kid. You're like,
and so much uncertainty in the world.
Yeah.
Like, is this the time to bring a child into this mess?
Right. I totally.
What a time to be alive.
I'm in awe, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, of anyone that does an 8-show week and has a newborn or a toddler. Because the 8-show week, anytime I've done it, is kind of all-encompassing by itself. Yeah,
totally. Like leave it 2-show day, leave it at 11 a.m. and come back at midnight.
You get it. And anyone that's done it knows. Like the 8-show week, it's like, thanks, maybe I'll exercise somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But that's kind of it, at least for me.
Maybe one social engagement.
How do you operate on a schedule with a child? That's, you know what I mean? Normally,
right.
we work so late. Is it hard?
I don't think I knew it was possible to do both. And then I think it took working with moms that were doing it all
to see it happen.
I was on the Newsies tour with Meredith Inglesby Blanchard, who, she and Steve brought their baby on the road, and seeing how they made it work was so cool and different from, I guess, your normal suburban, lifestyle. But there's a whole Facebook group of women who are making it work, and seeing Audra McDonald post on there and Kelly O'Hara and Laura Benanti being like, I'm looking for this ballet class for so-and-so. Or
I think that's a change. It's my guess. I wasn't around before this too much. I was in the 80s or 90s. But I imagine that the culture has shifted in a positive way towards women. I hope so too.
Yeah.
But I think so. That's my guess. That I think that the embracing of women having kids.
Right.
I think producers, I'm hoping, are more embracing of that.
Right. And
being flexible with maternity leave, as opposed to saying, well, you're pregnant, bye. You know what I mean? I think that I would imagine it was a rougher terrain back in the day as far as women having kids in show business. I think it's shifted, I hope.
I don't know if this is TMI for you, but I'm breastfeeding still.
Oh
and he's 5 months, and even just having the support from that Facebook group and seeing these other women going back into shows being like, well, how are you pumping? How are you making this work, and helping each other sort of figure it out as we go back into it post-pandemic.
A network of people that are also willing to talk about it too.
Right.
Which I imagine was not always the case.
Yeah.
What do you want to do in your career that you haven't done yet?
So much of my dream since I was 13 years old was to play Glinda and Wicked on Broadway. So when you have sort of this, I don't know, tunnel vision for one thing for so long, it is interesting to, I guess, arrive and be like, what now? What Glinda says, happy is what happens when all your dreams come true, isn't it? So yeah, I do think there's sort of this season of dreaming new dreams. And
are you okay with not knowing what your dreams are and just letting it be?
I feel like the answer should be yes, but in some ways no, as an actor, you're your own business, right? So you're trying to steer and navigate things. So, it's nice to know what's next. I definitely felt grateful during the pause during the pandemic to be like, whew, I have a job to come back to. That's nice.
Yes.
But
and rare.
And rare. And
really
even just to
rare.
have like a good chunk of a contract left to be like, all right, I know what the next few months or look like, and that there's a sense of security to that, I guess.
I'm so thankful to you for being on here. You've been a brilliant guest, and I know everybody at home is looking forward to seeing what you do next with your career, because the one thing I'm certain of is it's going to be just beautiful and illustrious and exciting. So thank you for being on here.
Thanks for having me. Dream come true.
If you like this show, find us on social media at Patten Disregard and tag us. If you don't like it, go fuck yourself. Let it be known that Chip Zien is anti-Bill of Rights for plants. Chip, your silence is deafening. If you know Chip Zien, if you know whatever his name is, if you know Chip Zien, fuck.